In this recharge and relax session, we're going to go through 5 very basic beginner exercises that are going to help lengthen out the adductors, which is going to be great to relieve any strain or pain in the adductor area and also hopefully improve athletic performance. So let's jump in. Now for this first exercise you are going to need a foam roller, and we're going to do a very basic exercise which is foam roller in the adductors. Now I know you probably know how to do this, but there's a difference between knowing how to do something and actually doing it. So to do this one, I'm just going to do it on one side, but you can pause the video and go through each side if you would like. So I basically lie down on my front, I'm going to do my left side, and I'm basically going to bring my left leg out to a sort of 3-4 o'clock. Foam roller pops in, and I basically just get into front, almost sort of like front plank style position, and I start steamrolling up and down that adductor, and I'm just looking for ugly spots. And when I mean ugly spots, that's just anything that doesn't feel very nice. Tender areas, knots, whatever you want to call them. And I got to tell you, that feels absolutely disgusting. I've probably fallen into that category of knowing how to do this, but potentially not doing this one enough. And I've just started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and there's a lot of adductor work, or a lot of sort of splitting the knees apart. I'm having to work the adductors, and I probably haven't been rolling them as much as I should do, and this is just really grim. And if you're a chap, you can get right up towards your you-know-what, but don't roll your you-know-what, and we can go all the way down to the bottom. When you get to the bottom, if it gets really tender, there's a kind of a cluster of nerves down there, so don't roll onto that. You can also straighten your leg out, and you can kind of roll in different areas. Oh, I'm kind of going onto the sort of medial aspect of my quad there, but it doesn't matter, it doesn't really matter. You're just searching around. It's quite hard to get onto the back part of your adductors, so like your adductor magnus on the foam roller. So you're really going to be kind of doing these more medial ones. Okay, so this is exercise 1, and it's just foam rolling the adductors. So moving on to exercise 2, so we're done with the foam roller, now we're just going to go for a basic exercise called the frog. We can progress that onto the tactical frog, which looks a little bit sexy. Definitely do this in the middle of the gym when everybody's watching you. So I'm going to first set up straight on, and then I'm going to show you the exercise side on. So essentially what you're going to do, you're in tabletop position. You're going to split your knees apart almost as wide as you can, not literally as wide as you can, but relatively wide. And now with your feet, you're going to basically put your feet down onto the ground like so, and your ankles are going to be right under your knees, and already you can feel a bit of a stretch in the groins, in the adductor area. Now the first thing you want to do is create a neutral spine, so you're going to flatten out your back, and then you're just going to sit yourself backwards. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and turn around. So I'm here, knees split apart, just there. My feet are turned out, ankles are below my knees. Now I'm not going to do this with a big arch in my back. I'm going to try and find neutral pelvis, and I'm just going to sit back into it and just feel that really disgusting stretch around my groin. If you're not feeling the stretch in your groin and you're getting a bit of a pain in your hips, either bring your knees in a little bit, and if it still doesn't work, maybe you don't need to use this exercise. And the frog is where we just sit in here like so. Now if we want to do the tactical frog, we basically move in and out of the stretch. So we might bring our hands a little bit further forward, trying to keep neutral pelvis, abs engaged. We're just going to shift forward and push the hips down, nice and easy. We don't want to arch the lower back, and then we basically just sit back into it. Ooh, lovely. Tactical frog, doing the business. We're just easing forwards and back there. You can move the hands around if you want, but don't go nuts on this one. It's kind of like equal part stretch, but equal part just getting those hip joints moving into places that they probably don't get put very often, so take it nice and easy. But that's the second one, the frog. The third exercise we're going to go for is the gate. So the gate is basically, it can be like a hip stretch, a side stretch, a QL stretch, but also an adductor stretch. So I'm just going to do it on my left side today. So I'm basically going to put my right knee literally underneath my hip, and then I'm just going to walk my foot away. I want a good stretch on my adductor here. So you might find that your knee starts to walk outside from underneath your right hip. I'm going to grow nice and tall. I'm just going to reach up and across. So reaching nice and tall, and I've got a lovely stretch down the outside. If I want to build a little bit of a strength in the adductors, I'm really try and keep that quad on and almost push that foot down into the floor. As I reach up, I can push this knee down through the ground. I get a nice stretch on this hip. And there we go. Oh. Feels a lovely stretch just there. And that is the gate. So moving on, we're going to go to a seated twist now. This isn't really an adductor stretch, but this is an opportunity to get you to switch on some of your short adductors at a short range of motion. So we're going to adapt this a little bit. So a seated twist, so you're going to sit yourself down. I'm going to do this on my right leg first. So a seated twist is when we cross our right leg over our left, and we basically kind of pull in and rotate away. Now what we're going to try and do here is we're not going to really be using the arm to pull us in so much. We're going to be using sort of minimal involvement from this arm and this hand. We're going to be trying to use the muscles and the abdominals a little bit more. So my foot's gone down. I'm going to start there. I'm going to sit up as tall as I can. My foot comes across. My hand goes behind me, and I'm going to bring my arm across and go outside of my knee rather than wrapped around this time. So outside of the knee, and then from there, I'm just trying to use my abdominals to rotate me, and then almost my adductors to pull my right knee across that way. So minimal involvement from that arm. This is a little bit uncomfortable actually. So you won't get so much of a stretch on this one. We can sit up nice and tall. This is probably a bit more of a strengthening exercise than a stretch. But that's the seated twist with minimal left arm involvement. So the final and fifth exercise we're going to look at is the basic butterfly. So just a nice way to stretch out some of those short, like kind of high adductors, and something a lot of us haven't done since we were at school. We didn't actually do this at school either. We sat cross-legged on the floor at school. But the butterfly, so feet are just going to come together. We've all seen this one before. We try and get ourselves into a decent sort of gap between the heel and the bum. We want to be as close as we can be. Now a few different ways. You can either grab the feet, you can apply a little bit of pressure onto the knees, but we want to try and sit nice and tall if we can. So I'm going to go just here. That's going to help me sit nice and tall, and I'm just going to start to ease my knees down to the floor, trying to push my chest through so I can get used to working my adductors from an actual, I should say, kind of functionally sound lower spine and pelvis. If I'm sitting, hunching way back here, that's not going to cross over to anything. I want a strong neutral spine, somewhere I can engage my abs, can use my glutes to pull my knees down, can come out a little bit. Can definitely feel a lot more tension on this right side, so I'm just going to give that one a little bit of work. There's no right or wrong ways to do these stretches. It's like whatever you feel, whatever it feels right. But that's our fifth stretch, and that's the butterfly. So those were 5 great beginner stretches that you can do at home with minimal equipment, and they're hopefully going to lengthen, ease strain, and relieve the adductor region and groin region. And I gotta say, I do feel nice and limber, nice and loose around that area. Hope you enjoyed that. See you next time.